responder psychologist.
My name is Tyson Lewis. I'm a fire captain for the County of Tulare.
My name is Pete Marquez. I'm a division chief for the County of Tulare.
My name is Shemeth Myers. I'm a captain for Tulare County.
So today we're going to talk about some things that might be helpful to people who are working in the fire service. Some do's and don'ts and helpful hints and how to navigate through a tough career. So I thought maybe it would be helpful if some people that have had long careers in the fire service talk a little bit about some things that they've learned on the way through that process. So we have several people here, and I wondered if we could start with you, Pete Marquez.
I'd say the thing that's most helpful is after you get an opportunity to go to therapy, when you realize that you have a problem with stress and you learn certain tools to get you through what you're going through, that you have to use those tools every day of your life. I think for me, PTSD is something that'll never go away, but when you have those tools, you learn how to use those so that the PTSD doesn't overwhelm you and it's almost non-existent. It's kind of like in the fire service. We have a tool for everything we do, but if you don't use the right tool, you're not going to get the job done. Likewise, if you don't use those tools, such as making a conscious decision not to go grocery shopping with your wife, to eliminate those things that cause you stress. And I say that joking because we were talking about that before we started here, and I think a lot of us have to work at identifying those things and saying, do I really need to participate in that thing if it really causes me stress? And if you have that conversation with your spouse, it's probably, no, I'm okay doing that myself. In fact, I'd rather enjoy it without you. And that's not a bad thing, because I think we always think we have to be into everything and good at everything we do. And giving that up isn't an admission that you're not a good spouse. So I think that's just an example of one tool that I use. So
My name is Shemeth Myers. What I've been learning a lot is to say no. When people ask me to do things or things I don't necessarily want to do or I don't have the time to do, I always had a hard time of saying no, and that would put more stress on me that I already had that I don't need to add to it. So I've been really learning to just step away and I'm not the only person that can help. Can you call somebody else? And just saying no really has helped my stress level come down, because I'm not worried about helping them and not worrying about what I need to do for my wife or need to do for my job. Just stepping back from that additional stress that I didn't need to add and just saying no has helped me quite a bit.
How you doing? I'm Tyson Lewis. One of the skill sets that I've learned and developed is to separate my home life and my work life, to give those things independent space. So for example, a simple technique that I use is I will not dress for work at home. I go in early and I'll get into my uniform there, and that helps me draw a mental line in between my home life and my work life, because those things are both important parts, but they affect one another. So by keeping them separate, I tend to deal better with the stresses of work and the stresses at home with a more active, aware ability.
Absolutely. And some comments about some things that Dr. Sharps talked about when he was talking about the brain. Training allows you guys to be safe in your job. So you train as firefighters for many years and you have continuing training. And so as a country, we do a really good job of training first responders how to be first responders. We don't do so well training you how to go home as a first responder. And how do you talk on the line versus how do you talk with your spouse or significant other? All three of you are in, command positions, and so my guess is, I've never been out on the line with you, but when you're talking to people that are working for you, it's very direct, very almost authoritative, right? Do this, don't do that. When are you going to get this done? When are you going to get that done? This needs to happen. And then you go home and you try that and things blow up. And you think about the hours that you have spent talking like a first responder, talking like fire personnel, and how many hours you actually have had conversations as a spouse or a father, and work wins, right? Because you're at work a lot more than you're at home. And so how do you make that transition? So Tyson, are there some things that you have learned about making that transition home? Like the 5-to-1 rule and things like that?
Undoubtedly, that's a great example. One of the things I learned is that from an emotional standpoint, with the people that you have relationships with, you have to put money into that piggy bank, so to speak, so that there's money to take out when you need it. The 5-to-1 rule is essentially a way to keep track of putting positivity into those relationships. Because when you're negative and you're down, it's easy to gripe, complain, and if you've been in a firehouse, you know there's plenty of that to go around. So using that 5-to-1 guideline helps you make 5 positive choices or comments that are attached to that one negative, so that you're cashing up goodwill essentially, and that seems to help everybody. For me personally, I actually had a little, like a Ranger tab bead thing I made that stayed in my pocket. Had a couple black beads on it, had some red beads on it, and I was manually keeping track when I started working on this type of stuff. And since then I've graduated from that. It's not in my pocket anymore, but it lived there for about a year. And that was a really successful thing for me that helped with everybody. Helped with wife, helped with kids, helped at work. It was just a really good technique for me to focus on staying positive and building that cash of goodwill.
Absolutely. So it is like, honey, can you take the trash out, versus, wow, you did the dishes, I really appreciate that. Or, man, I noticed that you, I don't know, fed the dogs, thank you, I really appreciate that. And I've had people say over the years, well, that's what they do around the house, why should I thank them for that? Well, because we all like to be thanked. It's the basis of good relationships is to be nice. And, you know, if both people are being nice back and forth, things work really well. And snarky comments tend to destroy. Cynical comments, sarcastic comments, all of those tend to really break down relationships, including with children, including with spouses, and also including with coworkers. So the more you can kind of monitor that dialogue with the people that you care about, the better those relationships will go. So you did a really good job of that. And things, you know, that's one thing you can implement very quickly, and you'll notice that everything begins to shift in the household if people are really putting that into practice. And it's something that it's a very easy concept to include in. And so when Matthew was talking about training, this video is all about retraining you for when you're at home, when you're with loved ones, how to deal with stress. It's about living a happier life, and that's kind of a retraining program, because you're trained only for the academy and into your professional life, but your personal life, you may not have had a lot of training in that. And so that 5-to-1 rule is a quick thing to add in. So, Pete, you want to talk a little bit about communication?
Yeah, I like that comparison that Matthew makes about training, because I think you really do have to continually go back on your training, and the training we're talking about is some of the skills you've taught us. Maybe not along the line of communication, but one of the things that you told me a long time ago was about most of us are fixers. You know, these two guys are station captains, and so they got to fix everything that's going wrong in their station, or could potentially go wrong, so they're doing their job. I got to fix everything that's going wrong in my division so that it goes right, so that the chief's happy. We don't have to fix at home, and that's so hard to remember, because luckily I have about a 50-minute drive from the office to my house, so I get that opportunity when I come home to kind of wind down. By the time I get home, I'm good, but then I have to tell myself I don't have to fix anything when I get home. Mm-hmm. I might have to help Patty with dinner and maybe straighten up, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I don't have to fix anything else. There's nothing that's my problem to fix. But then you go to work the next morning and like, okay, I got these things I got to deal with today. So now I do got to fix people's mm-hmm. problems, because that's what I get paid to do. Mm-hmm. But then I got to turn it off and turn it on. Mm-hmm. And for me, when you talk about that command presence, it's very important at their level and my level to have that command presence in the fire service. And it's hard to turn that off. I know for me, that being a Catholic deacon, when I go to mass on the weekend and now I'm dealing with parishioners, they don't care what I do in my professional life. They're not going to take orders.
Right.
And I have to work hard at talking to them in a different way than I've ever been used to. But the reason I mention that is because you could use that same tool talking to your family, you know, but it's a real hard off and on.
Yes.
There's no middle ground there. So,
you know, one of the folks that works for me, she told a guy the other day, and it really resonated with him. She said, "Your wife is not a call." And I thought, oh, that's such a profound statement. You know, when you go home, you're not responding to a call out. You're not responding to a citizen that is in trouble and in crisis. This is your spouse, and so you don't start saying, okay, well, these are the things you need to do right now, because then spouses get mad. You know?
yeah, you're absolutely right. I get home and my wife, I love her to death. You know her, but she likes to tell long stories. And to me, I'm thinking, okay, what happened? How do we fix it and do this? And I have to go, okay, she just wants to talk about it. So I just have to listen to her long stories. And bless her heart, I love her to death. But sometimes you have to tell yourself, okay, that's important to her for me to listen to that.
Yes.
To that extended story. So.
You can't give her an after action sheet.
Yeah.
Can you just fill this out?
Yeah.
That's a great comment. How about you, Shamuth, and communication?
Communication, yeah. I mean, calming down. Like, I've been using the tool of making friends with myself and calming down and not getting upset at things. Just these little things. So trying to communicate with my wife about that. I mean, excuse me. I mean, when I started knowing that I had a problem is when I started being snippy, which I was never snippy. And she's like, what's going on? You know, and that was one of the biggest things, an eye opener for me was, whoa, what's going on with me? Because I wasn't this way. And then she would make comments like, you're in the car, but you're not really in the car. Because my mind was going 100 miles an hour thinking about different stuff, and I wasn't really communicating with her. So I've been trying to make it a point where I try to leave work at home now. Like Ty was saying, you know, you bring it home, and now it's like, okay, I'm leaving this at home. I need to talk to my wife and figure things out. Instead of, you know, like, I don't know, you have to just open up. And I have a great wife that, you know, understands, you know, but she also pointed out the things that were going on, and for me to realize it, you know, helped me out a lot. And I, you know, yeah. And one of the tools I've been using too is making friends with myself, because in the fire service, you know, we're always being looked at, and you always try to not mess up, or I could have done it better this way. We go over calls, and it's like, well, you messed up on that, and you messed up on that. So I started feeling like all this burden and weight on me, where I couldn't even function anymore because my mind was thinking 100 miles an hour, where I was making mistakes that shouldn't have been being made at all, like little things. So really look at myself in the mirror every morning and telling myself everything's gonna be fine, and to calm myself down has really helped me a lot. So yeah.
Learning to live with yourself.
Learning to live with myself, with my mistakes, and not thinking I'm the, you know, worst firefighter out there because I made this one little mistake. Because we go over so many calls all the time, and you're like, man, I really messed up on that. I should have done that better. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? And just calming myself down and looking myself in the mirror, I was like, you're all right. Like, nobody got hurt. Everything's fine. The end game was still the end game. It went out. So, yeah.
And I suspect most firefighters do that. You know, that kind of going over those calls in depth, and you do that as most departments do. So when guys do that, I tell them, you can't fix the past, but you can learn from it. And so you push yourself forward and go, okay, if this ever happens again, this is what I'm going to do. At the time, I did the best job I could do, and that's all I can do. And now I'm going to push forward, and next time, if it ever happens again, this is what I'm going to do instead. But, you know, it's one thing to evaluate, it's another thing to persecute. And those are two different things. And so making sure that it's okay to look at what you can do better, but not to use it as a way to beat yourself up. But Shemeth, you said something that I think is really important. You listened to your wife. And she started to say, there's a problem. You know, things are not going well. And I think most people, and not just first responders, when their spouse starts giving them that feedback, they get defensive. You know, and they go, I'm fine, everything's fine, leave me alone. You know?
And I was like, everything's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong.
As you know, are crashing and burning, right? And so, Ty, could you talk a little bit about when you first noticed that things were not going well? What are some red flags you'd like to share with people so that they can begin to understand when do you reach out for help?
In my instance, we noticed around the house that things were beginning to get a little more stressful for both my spouse and I. There's a lot of us out there that have wives that are in a similar field. You may be a policeman married to a nurse, or a fireman married to a nurse, or there's EMS folks out there, and we're all dealing with these things the same way. Until we get a skill set that allows us to develop the means to handle this cumulative stress, we might be handling that in bad ways. And at my household in particular, both my wife and I went through some negative call stuff at the same time. So we were dealing with our problems the wrong way for both of us. So we noticed distance. There's an outside shot that if you ask her, she would tell you that my nickname became the dictator at our house. Because I would come home and type A. You go into your command presence and this is dirty, it needs to be cleaned, you, and you go clean that. Or we're gonna practice A, B, and C today. So instead of laying forward lays and doing initial attacks, we were mowing the lawn in a strike team configuration. And that was not advantageous to my family life. So that rift was one of the first things that sort of put us both on notice that there was a lot more stress around the household.
And so when people start becoming roommates with their spouse, that's a red flag, right? You guys are living parallel lives. That is a common one. That gives you an indicator that things need to be changed before your marriage crashes or your relationship crashes. Pete, what gave you the idea that you needed to deal with some stuff?
Oh, I would say definitely it was the noticeable anger all the time. You know, at the time I was working for a different department, and I was mad at everybody at work. Nobody really wanted to talk to me because I was angry all the time. I know that my children, they're adults now, and my wife, they knew I was angry all the time. Any little thing would set me off. It's the same thing with, like you said, if the lawn wasn't mowed right, or the water bottles in the refrigerator weren't lined up right, everything had to be perfect, and nothing was perfect. But when I realized how angry I was and how much I was starting to hurt those I loved, and how much people didn't want to be around me at work, I knew there was a problem. And I tell people that I meet, in fact, I suggested it to somebody not too long ago that was in a significant event. If you catch yourself being very angry, you've got a problem. And that person told me, I'm already angry. I said, then you've got a problem. And I think I give him your contact information. But that's the biggest thing, is that anger. Because if you're not a person that's pissed off all the time, and you really do enjoy life, but now all of a sudden you're not, there's something going on. And like you said, it's a cumulative stress that has caught up to you, and you're going to crash if you don't fix it.
Absolutely. So some of those symptoms include, like, night sweats are very common. You know, people wake up and their whole side of the bed is filled with sweat, and that's too much adrenaline. Their system's running too hot. Isolating from family, and people isolate in different ways. They may take on extra shifts so they can avoid their family. They may, start sleeping at different times so that they don't have to spend as much time with their family. They choose to go to a certain station, for instance, where they don't have to see anybody or talk to anybody. They start kind of withdrawing. That's a big red flag. And the anger is probably the most common with first responders, you know, and usually the person that is seen as the grumpiest and angriest is usually the one that's hurting the most. And so if you find people are starting to avoid you, and kids start going, yeah, Dad, have a nice day, or Mom, you know, I'm out of here, you know, listen to that. And it doesn't mean you're bad. It does mean, though, that there's some things that you can do to fix it. And so get it fixed. You have the right to have a happy life. You have the right to heal. And there's some very specific things you can do to heal, and the help is out there. So, Shamith, how about anger for you? Did you see any?
I had anger. I think it was anger and jealousy, you know, looking at different things and for no reason why it should be, you know, and really realizing that. And then with the anger, and then all of a sudden I would just start crying and didn't really know why. I'd be depressed, and then I get angry again, then I start crying again. So it was weird. Anxiety. I'd never had panic attacks before. Started having panic attacks, and we go on so many panic attack calls. You know, you're recognizing it yourself, and I don't know if anybody's ever had one, but you think you're gonna die, and there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, that was the warning signs with me, where I was like, okay. A major one was my wife. Me and my wife's been together for 21 years. So when she sees something, and all of a sudden, when she told me, you're here, but you're not here.
Yeah.
And when she was asking me questions, I had no idea what she was talking about, because I wasn't even listening to her. So yeah, a lot of anger.
The comment about tears is a common one. I hear that all the time. Guys will say, what the heck's the matter with me? I'm watching the TV and a commercial comes on and I'm crying. What is the matter with me? And it's when you get too much cumulative stress, your system, it feels like you're dog paddling in water and somebody just pushes your head underwater. You know, it's those little things that just can tank you. And it's all of this is adrenaline driven. And so the first thing that people have to do is cool down the system. And so there's a number of ways to cool down the system. And I'm going to pick on you a little bit, Pete, but one of the ways you started to cool down your system is you got very involved in your church. You know, and that was a really good outlet for you. And it also took you completely away from work. You know, and so we have to have those things in our life that give us balance. And so often first responders, as citizens, we ask a lot of you guys, you know, and you take it on, you shoulder it, and then you feel like you don't have any right to your own life. You know, it's just, I've just got to give and give and give. Yes, but you also get to take a little bit, and you get to have fun, and you get to have some balance. And you know, like I said, the academy's great at teaching you how to give. It doesn't teach you how to survive it, you know. So, Pete, how did you incorporate some fun things in your life to cool your system down?
I think it was taking time to do things like with Patty and I. We're very close. We're always together, and that's a good thing. But I think you pointed out a date night once in a while, before COVID, going out to dinner, or even with COVID, you know, just the kids will come over and we'll barbecue. Just being around people that you love being around, and you can just relax, and you don't have to talk shop with them because they could care less about what's going on at work. But I don't want to say they could care less. They know that they don't need to know what's going on at work. That I think just finding things you like to do with people you like to be around is the most important thing, and having that relaxing time. For us, it's, you know, putting something on the Traeger or on the Blackstone grill, or trying some new recipe. And you know, we were talking about cigars a while ago, maybe a cigar once in a while, and just relaxing in some downtime. You know, so
Downtime's so important.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah, your brain has to get away from work. Any work, doesn't matter really what you do, but especially the kind of work you guys do.
One of the things that Ty helped me out with is shutting off the radio. When just shutting it off. I remember being at home and just, you know, listening to my HT. And it's like, you gotta, it's like, why are you doing that, you know? But the biggest thing is that if you recognize it, if you're starting to get angry, if you're not yourself, if your wife says something, if your girlfriend, your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, co-workers even, Ty's helped me out, get some help. There's no reason why we should be miserable. We have one of the greatest jobs in the world, and I want to have longevity with it, and I don't want to be miserable. I want to go back to those times when I was 18 years old and started out, you know, in the Firefighter 1 Academy at COS, and be happy. Happy every day I come home, and happy, excited that I have the job. So find help if you need it.
I would say along the same line, find the right help, because I know when things weren't going so well, call EAP and find a clinician, and I'm like, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Probably a handful of those that just didn't work. You have to find don't give up on finding somebody that gets you. And then the only thing I'd say beyond that would be, don't be so hard on yourself. It's not your fault you're going through this. It's your fault if you don't get help to deal with it. But learn to, like you told me, learn to forgive yourself about things you've done in the past where you may have hurt people. They'll forgive you, so forgive yourself. So
Yeah, that's a big one.
I would say an important thing to know, guys, is one, you got to educate yourselves about this stuff. And you please correct me if I'm wrong, but PTSD is what it's called. That's the moniker it's got. I don't know how much of a disorder it really feels like it is, because it happens to all of us across the course of our career. So it's not a one-off thing where you don't have it on Tuesday and suddenly you've got it on a Wednesday. It's a cumulative thing, and it's sneaking. If you're not educating yourself about what skill sets you need to build to deal with it, or what the effects of it are, then you're doing yourself a disservice. So find what resources are out there and go look for those things.
Almost always when folks come to me, I tell them the first thing I want you to do is go have fun. Because most of the people that come to me haven't been out on a date night forever. They haven't done anything fun forever. Sometimes they'll say, well, I mowed the lawn. Well, okay, but what's fun? Is that fun for you? Because for most people, it's something they do, but it's not fun. And laugh. Laughter is so very protective. When we laugh, we release serotonin and dopamine and endorphins and good stuff. You know, get on YouTube. There's all kinds of great comedy. Dry Bar Comedy is a great app on the phone. Laugh. Get your system cooled down. You know, turn on that parasympathetic nervous system and let your system begin to completely cool down. On your days off, take the days off. If you don't have to work overtime, don't work the overtime. Get away from work, cool down, have some fun in life. Remind yourself what you're living for. Life isn't to be endured, it's to be enjoyed. Figure out a plan and then make yourself do it.
I would say in our department that we're moving forward with a peer support and some other training that's going to be available to everybody, firefighters, dispatchers, fire inspectors, office staff, because we're all in it together. And I think that's a huge step for the department, is so that the more people that are aware of this, the more people that are apt to reach out to these two or to me or anybody else and know they've been through it, they get it, there's some help out there.
Absolutely. Peer support is a great help, you know, and reach out to your clergy as well, you know, and reach out to a first responder psychologist, somebody that has actually worked with your specific needs, but absolutely take action. Don't just keep sinking. Okay, you take action everywhere else. You take action anytime you're on call out. Take action in your own life, because your own life's really important and you get to have a life.